while shipments of medical supplies have more than doubled. The government announces billions of dollars of investment into private sector infrastructure projects. It's also going to provide incentives to help companies create 50,000 jobs. And the U.S. Federal Reserve says it's going to keep interest rates near zero through 2022. Mixed reactions in the stock markets, though, as Jerome Powell says an economic recovery is going to take some time. It's 5 o'clock p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea reported 45 new cases of COVID-19 on Thursday, most of them in Seoul and the surrounding areas. All but 5 were community transmissions. Of the new cases, 21 were in Seoul, 16 in Gyeonggi-do Province, and 6 in Incheon. The total number of cases now stands at 11,947. There were no new deaths, leaving the death toll at 276. More than 25,000 people are currently being tested. There were cases confirmed at Samsung Electronics Research Complex in Suwon and at one of Kia Motors' plants in Gwangmyeong, south of Seoul, resulting in both facilities being closed. North Korea is warning the U.S. to stop commenting on inter-Korean relations or face what it says will be terrible consequences. The Director General of the North Korean Foreign Ministry's American Affairs Department, Kwon Jung-kun, made that comment in an interview with the North's state-run Korean Central News Agency that aired on Thursday. This comes after the U.S. State Department said it was disappointed by North Korea's recent moves and that it wants the regime to return to cooperation and diplomacy. Kwon said there's no time for the U.S. to play grandfather to South Korea because Washington already has enough to discuss with Pyongyang. And staying out of inter-Korean matters, he said, would help the U.S. presidential election in November go smoothly. South Korea's total exports during the first 10 days of June were up, but the average daily exports fell. The Korea Customs Service said Thursday that exports from June 1st to June 10th amounted to some $12.3 billion US dollars. That's up more than 20% from the same period last year. Exports of medical supplies rose by more than 136%, and semiconductor exports were up 22%. Petroleum products and auto shipments fell, but when the number of working days is taken into account, the daily average of exports fell almost 10% on year. Exports to China went up by more than 35%, while shipments to the Middle East and Australia fell. The Bank of Korea is projecting global production and trade during the pandemic to be even weaker than during the 2008 financial crisis. It said Thursday that this will deal a further blow to South Korea's exports. Shipments of semiconductors used in mobile phones are expected to be one of the areas hardest hit. But the BOK noted that semiconductor exports will pick up in the latter half of the year as countries resume economic activities. Automobile and machinery shipments are also expected to drop due to falling global oil prices. As part of its plan to help the economy recover, the South Korean government is going to invest nearly $5 billion US dollars in privately funded infrastructure projects by the end of the year. And specifically for jobs, it's going to help companies create 50,000 of them for young people, with benefits for companies that take part. Yoon Jung-min reports.
South Korea aims to create more jobs through faster investment in private companies in the latter half of this year. Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi said Thursday that as well as its $51 billion planned investment in the public sector, the government will create investment projects in the second half of the year to inject around $4.9 billion US dollars into private businesses. The finance minister also unveiled a plan to increase investment for non-contact industries and biotech industries by over $1.8 billion. The government said that as part of plans to create 150,000 private sector jobs, it will create 50,000 jobs in the digital sector for young job seekers and another 50,000 jobs at small and mid-sized firms. It will launch these projects no later than July. Regarding the job status for May announced Wednesday, Hong said the government is aware of the poor job situation, but said it's getting better.
Jobs numbers have been falling for 3 consecutive months, but the employment shock is getting better with a relatively smaller decline of 390,000 jobs. We will do more based on our job retention policy and job creation policy.
In addition, the government plans to revise rules on corporate venture capital. And the finance minister said the government is mulling over buying up corporate assets to help companies struggling from the liquidity crunch. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve is leaving its benchmark interest rate near zero and will keep it there through 2022. The stock markets have been mixed on that news, but the Bank of Korea saw it as positive. Our Kim Jae-hee has this report.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has kept interest rates unchanged at 0 to 0.25% and said it would keep interest rates near zero through 2022. It also projected the U.S. economy would shrink by 6.5% this year, but bounce back with a 5% gain in 2021.
We're not thinking about raising rates. We're not even thinking about raising rates. So what we're thinking about is providing support for this economy. We do think this is going to take some time.
Following the Fed's rate freeze, the tech-heavy Nasdaq closed at a record high on Wednesday. It closed at over 10,020, up more than 0.6%. But the other U.S. indices were down. The Dow Jones fell about 1%, while the S&P 500 lost more than 0.5%. The CEO of a U.S. wealth management firm said the Fed is doing a good job, but has to guard against speculation.
So I think this is going to be an interesting balancing act in doing what's best for the economy, but also not creating any bubbles that could be detrimental to the economy down the line.
The Bank of Korea was hopeful on Thursday, saying the Fed's stance will have a positive effect on South Korea's economy.
If the Fed continues its easing stance, it will eventually positively affect not only the U.S. economy, but the global economy as well, including the South Korean economy in the long term.
But one analyst played down the optimism, saying the positive impact would be minimal.
If the Fed's policy allows the U.S. economy to recover faster, leading to a recovery in external demand, it would eventually improve South Korea's exports too. But I think the impact won't be as big, as the Fed's decision is not far off expectations.
South Korean stocks were down on Thursday, with the benchmark Kospi falling more than 0.8% and the Kosdaq down some 0.2% at the close. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market action this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-won, professor of economics at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, thank you as always for coming on.
Good afternoon, David.
As we just heard, the Fed pretty adamant that it's going to keep interest rates at almost zero for next year and the year after. Now, tell us about the decision and what it means.
To summarize what Fed Chairman Powell said Wednesday, central bank has no plans to raise interest rates and committed to supporting economy following the shock caused by the pandemic. Here, it should be noted that his speech has both of good news and bad news. Good news is, of course, there will be 0% U.S. key interest rate by the end of next year. But the bad news is economic recovery takes longer than expected.
Right, he did say it would take some time. Now, despite the promise of low interest rates, the indices on Wall Street were down for the most part, except for the Nasdaq, which continued its recent gains. What's the story in the global markets?
Due to mixed signal from U.S. Fed, Dow Jones and Nasdaq moved in the opposite direction on Wednesday. Dow Jones Industrial, where major manufacturing companies are enlisted, decreased by 1%. But Nasdaq, where high-tech companies are listed, increased by 0.7% on Wednesday. Particularly, Nasdaq positive gain is driven by high-tech leaders like Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, and so on, because it is widely accepted that businesses of these corporations are expanding even over and after coronavirus pandemic.
Now, here in Korea, the Kospi, the main index, seemed unsure this morning, briefly turning positive before closing this afternoon down almost 0.9%. What happened there?
As concerns on ongoing recession, both in global economy, in Korean economy, and uncertainty of the market, domestic market declined today. Kospi decreased by 1.1%, and Kosdaq decreased also by 0.8%. In both markets, domestic investors bought stocks, but there was a huge sale from foreign investors.
You know, in other news, there seems to be a consensus growing among international organizations like the IMF and the OECD that the Korean economy will shrink this year. Some are saying that makes the government's outlook seem a little too optimistic. It's still calling for slight growth. What's your view, Professor Kim?
In April, actually, IMF has released Korean economic growth forecast as negative 1.2%. And yesterday, OECD, the Paris-based international organization, predicted Korean will have negative 1.2% growth this year, under assumption of no further mass infections take place. But OECD predicted that if Korea is hit by second pandemic, it will contract by 2.5%. Actually, according to OECD's report, economic contraction of Korea is less than peer economies, advanced economies, because of Korea's successful strategy in containing virus spread. Korean government, I think, still maintains a positive 0.1% economic growth for this year, but I believe sooner or later, government will update economic growth with negative figure.
Yeah, and speaking of the Korean government, its fiscal health has taken a hit with all this going on. There's talk now about further spending like universal basic income, a second round of relief payments, and other cash benefits. What do you think about these ideas and the state of the public finances?
Basic income, in which a certain amount of money is paid to all general public to cover minimum living expenses, has become a major topic of debate between ruling and opposition party politicians today. But I'd like to say that this is a very crucial issue that determines the whole welfare system in the future. Therefore, there should be enough discussions and experiments on this matter before implementing basic income policy. For example, to finance basic income, it is necessary to reshuffle all current budgets on low-income people and socially weak people. Then it is very possible that the support on these low-income people will be weakened under basic income plan.
That's an interesting point. Professor Kim, it's always great to get your insights. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much.
Now, last month, South Korea launched a new tourism campaign introducing 7 travel routes that highlight the country's cultural heritage sites. One of the courses is on Jeju Island, a place whose unique geological features are not only amazing to look at, but have scientific value as well. Lee Kyung-un reports.
The island of Jeju, just off the coast of the Korean peninsula, was formed by volcanic eruptions. Its unique geological features and natural beauty make it a popular destination for domestic tourism, even more so with the halt in overseas travel. The top cone of Seongsan Ilchulbong, or Seongsan Sunrise Peak, is one of the island's most iconic spots. Rising out from the ocean, the sea cliffs offer a view that cannot be seen in other volcanic cones around the island. It's also known for its scientific value, given its well-preserved bowl-shaped crater and the inner structures of a hydrovolcano, which is why it is designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It takes roughly 20 minutes to reach the peak, where you can enjoy one of the most spectacular sunrises in the country.
I was really impressed when I came here for a school trip. I wanted to come here with my kid, as the hiking course is not that tough either.
The volcanic activities have also created this estuary where fresh water meets with the ocean. The tide's ebb and flow can be even seen in this lake. And in the afternoon, the water level goes down by up to 2 meters.
Tourists can take a ride on one of Jeju's traditional fishing boats known as Taeu. The wooden boats were once used by haenyeo, or the island's iconic female divers.
And people can use kayaks to get up close to volcanic cliffs. But Manjanggol Cave may offer a truly exceptional experience, taking you into actual passageways that lava once flew through. Meaning very deep in local dialogue, the tunnel shows the delicate footprints of the lava flow from which its direction and thickness can be estimated.
I've been to other caves before, but I've never seen anything so big so far.
Some 170 volcanic caves have been discovered so far, of which 4 are open to the public. 이경은, 아리랑 뉴스, 제주.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.